Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Cindy.
And I'm Will.
And we both work for Coinbase, specifically on the commerce team. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what we do as a team, like what commerce is, and then spend most of the time talking about how you can leverage our API for your hackathon projects. And then we're going to do a little bit of a demo to show you how easy it is to set up and work with our API. So first of all, what is commerce? So commerce is a product that is designed to allow merchants to easily accept cryptocurrency payments. All you need is an email, and you just make an account on our website, and within minutes you can start accepting payments through our platform. And you can manage your payments, you can check your balances, and you can withdraw your money to any address that you choose, all through this user-friendly UX. And so that's what we do. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some highlights in our API that we think would be really useful for you as you think about what you want to do for your projects. And also we're going to talk about our prize. So we're sponsoring a 1,000 USDC prize for the team with the most creative use of our API. So we're really looking for someone who kind of thinks out of the box and makes us surprised in terms of oh, I didn't know you could use our API to do that. So just that's something to be thinking about as Bojan talks about kind of some cool features that we've already built that you can maybe use out of the box.
Hello, everybody. So our API primarily is geared towards merchants that want to make it very easy for them to accept cryptocurrencies and to kind of be notified about all of that. So a big process of accepting cryptocurrencies is that we need to be generating a lot of addresses and need to be monitoring what happens to them. So if you happen to be building some projects where you need to have kind of per session or per user unique identifier, you can use our API essentially to achieve that thing. The addresses that we generate, they're all BIP 32 and 44 compatible. We should mention that our product is non-custodial, meaning that you get one master mnemonic seed, and from then on we can derive essentially an infinite number of addresses. We do monitor these things. We generate different addresses for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, but I guess the more interesting things for us this weekend is Ethereum and USDC. So that is one thing that I think can be of use as a building block, even though you don't do anything payments related. The other side of once we've generated these addresses, it's that you can use is that we can send webhook notifications whenever something happens to them. So if somebody sends a payment to it, if that payment is confirmed on the blockchain, we will send you a webhook notification indicating that that particular thing happened. And the way that we can use this thing as a building block is that if you need some sort of interaction that needs to be driven by certain funds reaching an address, you can, instead of building some custom monitoring on the blockchain level, you can use our API and our webhook notifications to do that thing. I guess in addition to all of these things, because we are a payments thing, we need to convert and handle different currencies in different amounts, whether it's fiat on one side, USD, crypto, Ethereum on the other one. You can use that essential exchange capability for that. So these are the two very basic primitives that we offer that a lot of things can be built on top of. As a product, we send emails to the buyers whenever a payment occurs. So if you need to have some sort of an email notification service that gets triggered whenever somebody pays something on the blockchain, you're more than welcome to use us. If you think that webhook notifications are too heavy and you don't want to have a server that's running and that's listening for these things, we provide redirect URL that will be automatically triggered whenever a payment happens on the blockchain. We do have integration with MetaMask, which is just a nice user experience whenever buyer opens our widget, we would automatically populate all the necessary fields in metadata. So if you have any questions about these things, even if you kind of like, I guess like we're mentioning these things, even if you don't end up using our API, we're more than happy to discuss and to help with like any of this. This is like essentially how our settings look. We host this particular widget where kind of like most of the magic happens. This widget can kind of like, is like what we show to the buyers when they interact with our platform. They can, we can require that an email is entered here in case you need that thing. But like once you have this thing, you can essentially share a link in whatever way you want, and the buyers will generate like one of these new typical charges. The other thing is that if you don't want this thing to be just kind of like hosted by us, you can include this snippet somewhere in your code. It would create like a button, and that's kind of like an easy way to get around it and to have this thing embedded right into your product instead of like going to like our website. All of these things kind of like another feature that you can think about using is like QR code generation, which is like pretty neat for any sort of like mobile wallets or real life interactions where you have like two devices, one of them which needs to like show a particular information and the other one needs to like scan that address. There is like a particular format that is like standard throughout the industry that we follow that works pretty well across the world. And also like we have like a point of sale capability. Like our product has like a point of sale feature that you can somehow like use it. You can populate programmatically through our API with these like products. If you somehow are building something that requires this thing or something along these lines, you're more than welcome to try to use it and to make the best out of it. So now let's go through a short demo where
Yeah, so the purpose of this demo is basically to show you how easy it is to kind of get started with our API. So I've already gone ahead and created a new commerce account, and we're just going to go through the onboarding flow real quick. So I have to go here. And so
zoom out a little bit.
oh yeah, because we're on. We're going to go through this kind of fast.
so this is like the master C that will control this account.
Yeah. So. Once you've set up your seed phrase, you can choose to back up to Google Drive. For now, we're just going to skip this step, and then that's it. So you've created your account, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go into settings, and we're going to generate an API key, which we're going to copy. And so this is, so we've already set up a kind of like just kind of default Rails app, and if we run Rails server right now and just go to it says hello world right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the controller for this page and add our API key into as a constant, and go into our gem file, and basically we want to include Coinbase Commerce as one of the required gems, and then at the same time, there's just some code that I'm going to copy over that we're going to use to generate a QR code for you guys. So back inside of Welcome Controller, now that we have the Coinbase Commerce gem, we're going to basically create a new client like that, and then we're going to fill out, we're going to create a checkout info object and basically populate it with all of the fields that we need in order to generate a checkout. So we're going to create name, which is Coinbase swag, and then description. And pricing type basically means that you can either specify how much a user will pay you, or you can choose, in this case, no price. So then the user can choose like to send you any amount, and this is good for donations. If you do choose to set a fixed price, you'll also have to fill in a like local price field in this object. And then finally, we're requesting that when users pay us, they fill in their name and their email. And that's the info for the checkout. And so what we're going to do now is basically client.checkout.create with checkout info. And this is the checkout that we just created. And each checkout is basically, or like this checkout object will have its own ID field. And as we showed you earlier, all of the payment or the checkout widgets are hosted at a link that we generate for you. This is a really ugly way of creating the URL, but we're gonna just create it like this. Coinbase.com/checkout. And we're gonna just create the URL like this. And then finally I'm going to, autofill, and then finally we're just going to add some code, again, just to generate the QR code. And then inside of our HTML, what we want to do is basically show you guys a QR code, which you guys can, which hopefully if this works. Yes, so you can scan this QR code now on your phone, or you can visit the link that I just created. And once you scan that QR code, you should be able to go to the checkout widget, send any amount of crypto or any currency that you would like, and we'll have your name and email. So then come by our table later, and we will have special swag for you guys. And yeah, so that's like basically it took like 5 minutes to kind of like get all this set up and like to expose this like QR code, and from here like it is possible to kind of just like the possibilities are endless. You could just like for your hackathon project, like I'm sure there are more creative ways that you can think of to use our API. So let me know if this goes through. Yeah? Okay. Yes?
Is everybody paying to the same address?
No, everybody has their own address that is being generated when they scan at this QR code. Yeah. All right, that is the demo. And that's it for our presentation. And we can just open up for questions for whatever time we have remaining.
So I'm curious this. When a user makes a purchase through the widget, where do those funds go? To like my wallet or the app's wallet or like fund and
So remember when we did our onboarding, we had a seed phrase, right? So that basically we create a wallet for you when we generate that seed phrase. So that's where the money is going.
okay,
Yes.
so this is a method for a user to quickly get a wallet and fund it through Coinbase.
Yeah, but we also, we don't have like Commerce doesn't have this seed phrase. It never hits our servers. So yeah, we're still non-custodial. We do allow you to have your funds on it. Yes?
I think I miss a point. Is it like a same address for every customer, or it can be dynamically generated?
So it's dynamically generated. So essentially like that, that seed that we generated at the beginning of the presentation, we are able to use essentially HB paths to generate new address whenever you essentially open that link, that checkout link. Special new address is generated just like for you. And that's how we know who paid what. That's because you're the only one that has seen that address. Any payments sent to that address must have come from you.
Yeah, but at the same time, I, as an Ethereum user, do not usually use wallets which utilize like all these BIP32 and
yes, so
44.
our product has built withdrawal features such that when you log into the product, we know where the funds are, which points in the BIP44 space. So we are able to instruct the web browser to
But I'm gonna pay for all this transaction additional mining commission, right?
Excuse me?
I'm gonna pay additional commission for all those wallets.
You have to pay an extra transaction fee when you withdraw them. So
And also, as soon as I withdraw, all those wallets gonna be connected together because it's kind of obvious by transaction itself. If you see graph of transactions, so what's the point of generating different addresses? Just for accounting?
the point of generating this intermediary address is so that you as a merchant can identify who paid what. Right here, it might be easy, you can send your transaction hash, but if you have something on the web, it would be impossible for you to know who actually paid this. And especially for people that use wallets, this is not that much big of an issue because you can prove which address was yours, where the funds originated from. But if you're paying from any big exchange, because of the way that fetch their transactions, because of the way their hot wallets work, it's pretty much impossible to know how your funds, where your funds coming from. So that's why we've engineered this way with this intermediary address. And yes, there's you're right, there are certain privacy considerations here which can be mitigated if you try to withdraw things in batches. But I don't think that honestly at any point you would like to have your funds at a certain level. If you need if you care about privacy, then there are different ways that you can do after the funds are there. This is not the most private solution out there, but we don't try to be.
So the key, the seed phrase generates a whole bunch of wallets, and is the intermediate wallets the subsequent account when it comes to the seed phrase?
So the seed phrase is essentially at the root of this HD hierarchy, and there are various ones BIP44 is one standard that defines essentially what path you should use. It's used more or less consistently across different wallets. So actually, if you load up the same seed into like the mobile wallet, like if you load it into like Coinbase wallet or like Red wallet or any of the others, it will work with like some caveats that like if you have like a gap, like it will not kind of like notice those things.
So like, are the intermediate addresses like derivative like the subsequent ones from the main one?
Yes and no. They are, but essentially we go kind of like 4 levels deep, and from that point onwards we just like go flat horizontal. And that's kind of like how the standard is defined, and that's how most wallets discover these addresses. So the intermediary addresses are needed so that you can, in intermediary spots in like this like space are needed so you can have kind of like calculate the final addresses and their corresponding private keys when you want to like spend funds from that. But they're not used, like we don't send funds to like these intermediary addresses. You could, and
They receive it and then you can, are they redirected in the end?
there is no redirection in the end. The only redirection in the end is that when a merchant wants to withdraw these funds, their funds can be like at different places because like from all the different people that have paid it. And at that point, they essentially kind of like in the case of Ethereum, they would create like multiple transactions to like one intermediary address, and then they would like a final transaction from that intermediary address to whatever destination you chose. So, and kind of like I guess the usual flow is that our merchants usually want to cash out to fiat, so they would like enter like some exchange address, their deposit address from like an exchange. So then we will kind of like do this consolidation and do like this kind of. That's kind of like how general flow of the funds work. There are certain things that we do to make this thing a little bit smarter, a little bit nicer from the US perspective, but in the simple case, this is like how it works. Yes?
2 questions. Sorry, I'm like writing them down to make sure I don't forget. First question. From the sound of it, it doesn't seem as though at least the smart contract related addresses like ETH and USDC are tied to like sweep accounts, so to speak. So like to kind of address that, the questions about the intermediate, like each address being its own like intermediate step. Like, have you guys considered making it so that each address that's generated is like a sweep account, so to speak, that sweeps into a main account after like a certain amount, or are there a lot of like smart contract development considerations?
I'll let Cindy answer that question.
So actually we are in the process of doing that. For USDC, Bojan actually already has like done that, and he's giving a talk about it, I think, tomorrow? 3 p.m. So if you would like to learn more about that, do come. So, but yeah, the short answer is yes.
And now Cindy's like doing the same thing for Ethereum. So.
Yeah.
Nice. And then
We couldn't do that before either, and we have to kind of like, it was made possible when Create 2 was introduced. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Just like a sneak peek for that is that doing this intermediary, having these intermediary addresses introduces quite a lot of complexity when it comes to like withdrawing the funds. And especially for ERC20 tokens introduces the problem that now we have like all these accounts that are intermediary that don't have enough ETH to pay for gas. You need to somehow provide ETH to those addresses, either by sending it, or we've actually developed these like very lightweight smart contracts that serve as like our intermediary address. So now we don't use like that BIP44 style derived addresses. Instead, like we deploy these like very lightweight smart contracts that automatically know how to flush that or non-custodial that anybody could use, and actually serve exactly as like sweep accounts. Whenever they receive funds, they essentially bounce it to the right, forward it to the right address.
Cool. And then like a sub-question within that, when you guys kind of like push that out into production, or will it have the ability for merchants to kind of like customize the parameters? So like a set of sweep accounts for like each month, kind of like following a previous question about like accounting and the different ways that like merchants would want to like keep track of stuff, or is that like
Well,
too annoying?
you could definitely do that in theory. We are not doing that. And I think that we want to keep it like, in my personal opinion, that sort of concern should be handled by the app itself and not by the blockchain layer. And especially because if you want to group them somehow, usually you want to do the grouping like after the payment happened. And all of this kind of like ad regeneration and forwarding needs to happen before. So there's like some stuff there, and definitely there's like a bunch of stuff that can happen, but if we kind of like decide to group these things, I think that that would be at the app layer, kind of like the database layer, like UI, rather than having like this thing be exposed to the blockchain.
And the last question is, I might have missed this, you guys covered this, but within the parameter associated with the price, can you get really granular such that like, say the price is like $100, but if you have some sort of promo for specific tokens, or you want to like incentivize people paying with one token over another, maybe like on the other end you have like a better exchange rate or something like that, can you kind of tweak, like say like 10% off if you pay in Litecoin or something for these, or?
We don't offer that thing, but essentially if you use kind of like a very raw API, you can customize what each person is seeing and the price that they're seeing. So there would be like where you can include something that, like the price is usually $100, but just for you in the next 5 minutes, it's like 90. So that's definitely something that you could do through the API. It's not something that you could do through kind of like the automated way that exists, like because like it's also possible to use our product and to create these checkouts and to create these links only within our dashboard, only from clicking buttons essentially. If you go that route, then we try to limit the knobs that we can turn, we can tweak so that it's simpler for the non-technical people to use it. But if you want to kind of like do this thing, then you should. We can talk afterwards. I can show you how it's relatively simple to set the price. Yeah, and also like another thing is that well, I mean we have to talk to more about like the smart contracts, but if you're interested or like if you're using like anything in your projects about how to kind of like do this like payment forwarding with like smart contracts, we're happy to like help and give like ideas or reference implementation or anything that might be useful. In the Discord group, we have like a one-pager that kind of like goes through all the stuff that we talked about and the different technologies that we've essentially used to build out the product. We're more than happy to help with any questions that you might have, whether it's about ad regeneration, HD wallets, sweeping, transaction building, nonce management, gas costs, like create-to addresses, all of this kind of stuff we've touched all over while building the product. And yeah, like even if you don't end up using our API, we're happy to help you in your projects.
Yeah, these slides are in our Discord channel too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not
There's a bunch of SDKs for different languages that are available also, not just Ruby, like there's Node and Python and